Honkai Star Rail is a game where memes are a mode of transportation, trading cards are weapons, and where touching grass is no longer enough. We must fight a god. In this digital casino with turn-based combat, we assume the role of the first anime character who has received a brain transplant from a raccoon found in Florida. Embedded within their chest is a Stellaron, a seed of pure chaos, and the universe's primary source of intrusive thoughts. With newfound traveling compatriots and our singular collective brain cell, we embark on a bizarre adventure full of zany hijinks and questionable life choices. And if you are thinking of playing this game, a word of advice: let the intrusive thoughts win. There will be spoilers in this video. This is Codename Vermilion reporting in from the Herta space station, which is currently experiencing minor technical difficulties.
Emergency power only.
So in stark contrast to Genshin Impact, Honkai Star Rail's story gets good almost immediately. You know, as opposed to after 20 to 40 hours of gameplay. You start off from the perspective of Makima from Chainsaw Man, Kafka, and her partner in crime Silverwolf.
I love the kind of woman that will actually just kill me.
Their primary modus operandi can only be described as doing a little trolling, which in this case involves causing a full-on hostile invasion as a distraction while they 3D print the main protagonist and then stick a Chaos Emerald in her chest. I have to really hand it to the devs, because this is probably one of the best tutorial segments in a JRPG I've ever played. While it's completely scripted and doesn't let you do anything outside of what it's telling you to do, having it integrated with the plot is a huge step up from a lot of other games that just bury you in page after page of screenshots and text to try and explain its basic mechanics. What really impressed me, however, is how masterfully the soundtrack progresses through this section of the game. It first starts off as tense and atmospheric, but gradually works in fun and bombastic electronic music as they show off more powerful moves from these characters. In fact, the music here is so good, I had minor whiplash when I made it to the main control center of the station and started playing a jazzy background track. What the frick? However, I'm getting ahead of myself. Shortly after you're spawned in, Kafka and Silverwolf leave and you pass out. When you're awake, you're greeted by Daniel and his emotional support airhead, who will serve as your traveling companions for most of the story. They are a part of the Astral Express, which I really don't think I need to explain given that the logo and title screen for this game both feature a train in space. The rest of the story on the space station is admittedly a little weak, but as far as extended tutorial segments go, it's pretty alright. It covers a lot of the most important mechanics and establishes enough world building to be intriguing without being super overwhelming. To assist you through this part, the game lets you borrow Himiko, my beloved, who wields a pizza cutter drone, and the universe's only orbital laser that does exactly 2 damage. It's around this time that I pulled my first 5-star, Chi-Chi 2. This allowed me to completely trivialize the combat. After successfully sending all of the bad guys to Horny Jail, we are then invited to join the Astral Express and their adventures. This could not be more obvious as a call to adventure, but Honkai Star Rail, hilariously enough, allows you to decline and stay on the space station instead. This leads to a secret ending in which all of the other characters freaking die.
You hear stories about how the final end of the Express and the Stellaron Hunters shakes the universe to its very core.
Anyhow, boarding the Express, we prepare to jump to our next destination. I wonder what grand adventure awaits us this time. Oh, it's Frostpunk. A local Stellaron has blanketed this planet in a perpetual ice age, and also made it our problem by making it too dangerous to warp elsewhere. This means that it's up to our intrepid trio to go planetside and deal with the Stellaron directly. Searching for any sign of life in this frozen wasteland, we bump into Shampoo, 3-time award winner of Sketchiest Man Alive. He mistook us for the cops, who just so happened to show up moments later, after we politely explained that there's been a misunderstanding, and we're from outer space. Jeopard 1A2 Flak Panzer SPAAAAACE here takes us to see their leader, the Supreme Guardian Cocolia. After explaining that we're here to deal with the Stellaron, she gives us a hotel room to stay the night while she considers how to proceed, which, turns out to be trying to throw us into prison. As it turns out, the local Stellaron has been giving her intrusive thoughts, and doesn't like competition. Making a daring escape, the main trio gives the feds the slip for about 5 minutes, and then immediately gets surrounded again. It's almost as if they know the city better than we do. Just as Weiss Schnee here is about to throw us in the slammer, Shampoo shows up and roofies everyone. Waking up in a medical clinic, we're greeted by Natasha, an underworld doctor. Feeling sick? As it turns out, Shampoo here dragged us and Bunny Senpai to the mines as a prank. Here we meet all manner of colorful characters such as Hook, She Exists, Ruby Rose, my daughter Clara, Findy, the best one, and my personal favorite, V1 Ultra Kill. Together, you explore the subterranean hellscape that is the underworld, a place cut off from support from the surface. Supplies are dwindling, the corruption is spreading, and everything is generally just kinda boned. While the story here is a little cliche and tropey, each interaction reveals more about the desperate situation Belobog has been struggling with for the past 700 years. A bleak and tragic tale of survival and the fight to preserve hope. However, with the power of love and incredible violence, things begin to change. Thanks to the combined efforts of the main trio and all of the friends we've made along the way, it all culminates in one of the best finales I've experienced in a video game. Forced into a fight we're destined to lose, Honkai Star Rail sets up a well-earned Deus Ex Machina. And I would be remiss if I failed to mention the very best part.
We made a choice, go fight against your fate. Pain will come with the blade. Pain will wake up the despondent crowd in this storming world somehow. I sheathe the sword not to kill. I sheathe the sword to let go. It's clouds above the ground. We got to hear the shooting sound.
Belobog's story managed to exceed all of my expectations for this game. Not only is the climax an unforgettable moment in all of gaming, the attention to detail is what really impressed me. They could have easily just had the primary trio scurry off once the final fight was done, but instead the developers take the time to really let you bask in the aftermath of the main story. It's this exploration of how all the major characters' lives are affected by the events you played through, and the emotional closure it brings that really cement just how well they executed the writing for this portion of the game. As nonsensical as an afterstory where Star Rail Sucrose recruits you as the director of the city's museum is, and despite the fact that the gameplay is totally recycled from a one-off Genshin event, the way they managed to integrate the characters into it further gives you a feeling of how connected your character has become to this setting. I especially appreciated how if you've completed the side quest about Cyril the Fool, you can bring to light the tragedy of her life and permanently alter how her legacy is portrayed. It's the little touches like these, all of the small Easter eggs, and funny hidden interactions spread throughout the map that foster a feeling of a living, breathing world, and really encourage you to leave no stone unturned. It's for all of these reasons why the next zone is really disappointing. The Qiangzhou Luofu. Qiangzhou Luofu.
仙州罗浮
is a floating city inside of a giant warship. The Astral Express winds up here because the Stellaron hunters are back on their bullshit, and we are contractually obliged to put a stop to their chicanery. The primary population of the city ship are people classified as a long-life species, which is to say they've achieved a form of immortality. Despite clearly benefiting from this, they almost always refer to said immortality as a curse. When asked why this is a bad thing, they tell you that immortality was caused by the Aeon of Abundance Yaoshi, who spawns nothing but abominations. Okay, but that still doesn't answer my question. It still seems pretty beneficial to me. Oh, but immortality caused overpopulation and fights over limited resources. I didn't buy this either, because quite frankly, that's a skill issue. You're telling me that this hyper-advanced civilization never invented birth control? It's not until the final act of the story that they think it's important to mention that immortality is the result of what is essentially a super cancer, that if left unchecked will corrupt your mind and make you into a hive mind zombie or something. This means that for the vast majority of the story, the fundamental conflict of the region is poorly explained, and nothing really makes any sense. The true illness of the Lofo is not Mara, it's World Builder's disease. The developers are so busy cramming in mildly interesting ideas about the setting that they forgot to flesh out things like basic character motivations, or showing how the events of the story affect them personally. Ah yes, peaches that grant immortality, everything being controlled by Jade, home of humanoids and dragons alike. I too watched the overly sarcastic production summary of Journey to the West. While there are certainly some really cool and flashy moments, the main plot really falls flat, especially since the final villain essentially shows up out of nowhere, and then Daniel here gets a power-up with no foreshadowing. Then after we defeat the bad guy, it just kinda ends without any kind of follow-up? Did Jingyuan die? What was the point of having Chi-Chi 2 show up if she wasn't going to have any plot relevance? What's the deal with Chaika over here? Why did the Stellaron Hunters only get like 15 minutes of screen time? What the heck is an imbibitor, and why can't my Daniel turn into him after the story is finished? It's very possible that these things will be resolved in a future update, but given that we had to wait so long for the story to continue, it really doesn't feel like it was substantial enough to justify it ending so abruptly.
Mushroom! Mushroom! Mushroom!
Heyo, Future Vermilion here. I just wanted to add some additional thoughts about the Lofo's story that I had while editing this part of the video. I realized that another big reason why the finale was underwhelming is because it's basically only Jingyuan and Dan Heng doing their thing, and everyone else is just kinda on the sidelines cheering them on. I get that the other members of the team are implied to be fighting alongside them, but we don't really see anything there directly contributing to the fight, only that they are supposedly just keeping Jingyuan alive while he and Dan Heng are doing all the heavy lifting. As a result, it's really easy to become emotionally disconnected with what's going on. I have a bunch of other ideas about how I would change the story of the Lofo, but that's probably going to be another video entirely, so make sure you're subscribed for that. It really says a lot that Yukong's side quest has way better writing than the entirety of the main plot for this region, and it's literally just Chinese Top Gun. The map design here is also just plain atrocious. In contrast to Belobog, the Lofo is a disconnected series of maze islands with no real sense of being somewhere people actually live or work in. The convoluted, cluttered environment is hard to read, and all of the repeated details make all of it blend together in a homogeneous mess. The only real standout area is the Dragon Palace, and Kanomiya, my beloved. Now that we've covered the story, let's talk gameplay. As I mentioned earlier, HSR has turn-based combat. Thankfully, it's the good kind of turn-based combat that's tactical rather than menu navigation simulator. Each character has a basic attack, a skill, and an ultimate. Skills cost skill points that have a maximum of 5 and are shared across the entire team, so you can't just constantly spam them. Basic attacks regenerate 1 skill point, and both basic attacks and skills generate energy for your ultimate. Once charged, a character's ult can be used at any time, interrupting combat as soon as possible so you can fire it off. This makes the combat much more active, because timing these right can interrupt an enemy team's combo or prevent a boss from using a strong attack. The keyboard shortcuts also allow you to play this game one-handed. Interpret that information however you see fit. All of this, combined with the flashy animations and setting battles to 2x speed, means that combat never feels like a slog. Situations that would be, like material farming, can easily be completed by auto-battling. This means that it's easy for me to grind out my HSR dailies while completing my Genshin dailies. Yes, I do have a problem. While the elemental system in HSR doesn't have reactions like Genshin does, exploiting enemy weaknesses is still important and adds depth to the combat. All enemies have a toughness bar that's basically like posture from Sekiro. Break this, and that enemy's actions are interrupted and they get a debuff depending on what element you use to break them. Timing this correctly is your team's primary form of crowd control, and a source of survivability. To what degree Star Rail has an endgame is somewhat debatable, but I'd say it definitely has more of an endgame than Genshin does. In addition to an equivalent to the Spiral Abyss, HSR also has the Simulated Universe, a roguelike game mode featuring tougher versions of the boss fights you encounter in the story. Not only is it fun, but it gives really good rewards too. Genshin would greatly benefit from having something similar. As for gear grinding and general character progression, if you're familiar with Genshin, you'll be right at home. Overall, I would say that the arms race between upgrading your characters and increasing the difficulty of the enemies is a much smoother experience compared to Genshin, provided you're diligent in investing in your primary team. Compared to early game Genshin, I never really felt like I struggled with basic combat, and if anything, was more than ready for the next world level once I was eligible for it. Alright. Now to address the elephant in the room. In previous videos, I've discussed Genshin's infamous artifact system. In Star Rail, we instead have... Compared to Genshin's artifact system, Star Rail's Relics system is definitely something else. While there are noticeable quality of life improvements compared to Genshin's system, there are also some caveats that make the entire thing more of a side grade rather than a direct improvement. Without going too much into specifics, generally it's easier to get a relic you want with the main stats that you want, but now instead of 5 per character, you need 6. On top of that, those all need to be on the correct set in order for you to get the set bonuses. While Star Rail could have easily had a massively better gear system than Genshin, all of the improvements are kind of a wash due to the increased rigidity. This could also be argued of the entire character progression as well. While it's much more costly to upgrade characters in Genshin, you can also get away with maxing out one hypercarry character and then throwing them together with underleveled supports, because you can just rapidly swap in, pop their abilities, and swap back to the hypercarry before the support dies. Meanwhile in Star Rail, you really can't afford to have any of your characters be too underleveled, because AoE attacks can't be dodged, and general character performance requirements make it so that an undergeared character really drags down the team. While multiplayer in Genshin does feel tacked on and a bit of an afterthought, Star Rail has no multiplayer. This is already a non-starter for some people. You can still add players as friends and even send them chat messages, but the closest you can get to multiplayer is the ability to borrow a friend's character during combat. It's still pretty nice to be able to yoink a limited character you don't have without inconveniencing your friend though. Generally, I'd say that Star Rail feels more free-to-play and low-spender friendly, as the free characters are all really solid and the game is much more generous with free pulls and premium currency rewards. Both iterations of the main character actually feel strong to boot. It's jarring that they're not fully voiced though, especially since they are voiced whenever it's an internal monologue. There are some conversations where they'll be silent one moment, voiced for the next bit as they think to themselves, and then go right back to being silent. As janky as this is, I still prefer this over having an annoying mascot character like Paimon serving as a surrogate voice for the main character. In general, companion characters like March 7th and Dan Heng are handled much better than how Genshin handles Paimon, which makes the story much more pleasant to play through. In general, I'd say what really makes Star Rail stand out on its own are Silverwolf is a great example of the kind of attention to detail that elevates this game to the next level. They made her more than just a hacker gamer girl stereotype by leaning into her canonical ability to hack reality and have her break the fourth wall. Her ult voice line is completely different depending on whether or not you have 2x animation speed activated. During her release, the devs had her hack the in-game news tab and the in-game mail system to vandalize it and spit out 10 of a really valuable consumable. More generally, the game is filled to the brim with various sci-fi references and memes. And the quality of life upgrades over Genshin really do make a huge difference. How could I review a Hoyoverse game and fail to mention the soundtrack? I already highlighted one of the best tracks when talking about Bellabog, but it doesn't end with just Wildfire. I don't know how they do it, but the music for this game is just as phenomenal as Genshin's. just don't miss. Compared to Genshin, Star Rail doesn't take itself quite as seriously, but that's a good thing. The localization takes all of this a step further by adding in meme references and slang, making all of the characters feel modern and relatable. All of the goofiness is balanced against the moments that are played straight, and as a result, the entire game is brimming with personality. It really is a shame that this is a gacha game, because that means I can't recommend it on principle. If you go into this game knowing what you're getting yourself into, then you're in for a great time. If that doesn't sound like your cup of tea though, no worries. There are plenty of other games I want to share with you all. Get subscribed so you don't miss those videos. Until then, this has been Codename Vermilion. End of report.
Pain will come.